Welcome back to a special episode of the Vandy Blitz. Today we have special reporter Steve Gelbs. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's like being back in the booth after COVID.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a wild, couple of years, huh? I think for those, just a brief background, I am a field reporter for the Mets. I've been doing that on and off since 2014. That was my first year around the team. I filled in for 55 games for Kevin Burkhardt. Then he ultimately went to Fox, and I've been doing it full time ever since. So first year was 2015. Thought they were going to start a run of championships after that World Series year, and then realized just how difficult it actually is to keep going back. So it was a great first year, but it's been a great job here for the last 8 years. And then this past season, I picked up doing Jets pre and post game, hosting pre and post game shows. So about 5-6 weeks into that right now. So that's my background. And yeah, in terms of being in the booth again, it was a very bizarre year for everybody, but certainly for our jobs to be around empty stadiums and try and make it seem normal on any level was difficult to say the least. But this year, slowly but surely, I think not only did things return to normal, but the appreciation level kind of was enhanced. And I don't think anybody will ever overlook just what having people in the stands means to the ultimate product again.
Right. Sports are such a spectacle again. When you didn't have fans in the stadium, and it just felt a little different. It felt like something was missing in every game that you watch. So it's definitely nice to have fans back in the audience. But so it sounds like you've been on the job for a really long time. You have all these interesting experiences going through your career. As 5 college guys who are pretty interested in sports journalism ourselves, taking this opportunity to talk to you, I guess I would ask, what advice would you have for somebody that's trying to get into the industry? What are some do's, what are some don'ts, and what are some good tips, I guess?
Well, the first piece of advice is keep doing exactly what you're doing, because what I tell everybody, especially kids that are trying to break into the industry right now, is, even since I started, things have evolved so much. And with the technology that exists right now, you really have the opportunity to do the job without having to formally be hired to do the job yet. And that is the most critical thing, because this is, all careers, it's about experience, but this is something that you can't learn by reading. You can't learn by talking to people who have done it before. You just have to get out there and do it. And I think that's always the hardest thing about this job, is getting that first job, getting somebody to trust you to be on the air without having any evidence that you can do it, because you've never been on the air before. And so with the technological advances in the last decade, the ability to start a podcast, the ability to write a blog, to do any of these things on your own, it essentially allows you to build this resume out and show it to people before many people in the past would have been able to do so. So doing something like this is perfect, and it's a great start. And then beyond that, I would say just meet as many people as humanly possible, keep in touch with as many people as humanly possible, send them updates as to what you're doing, send them, reels that you're making, asking for critiques, because it's a people business. And, you may see some jobs listed, but the job you're probably going to get is the one that you hear from somebody that is in the business that and you've made some connections with. So those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice, I think. But more than anything else, probably don't get discouraged, because coming out of school, that's when it's really hard. Getting that first job is really hard, and the people that stick with it are ultimately the people that break through.
And speaking of the people that you've met, I'm sure you've been exposed to so many people in the industry throughout all your time. And I was just wondering, on a personal level, you've definitely been through in a lot of cool, interesting situations on the mic, off the mic. And I'm just wondering, what's been your most memorable experience to date, whether it be an interview with the Mets or Jets or whatever it has been? What's been your most memorable experience?
Yeah, I've had so many of them, and I get asked this question a lot. The one that sticks out more than any of them is an interview I did with Johnny Bench when we were in Cincinnati. And, he was somebody who we had heard was going to be in the building. And you never really know with these older players if they have any interest in being on the opposing broadcast on a night where they probably just want to be taken in a baseball game. Johnny Bench was there to watch the Reds play the Mets. He was in his suite. He didn't need to do anything. And I asked the head of the PR department for the Reds if he could get me in touch with Johnny and see if he'd be willing to come on our broadcast for a little bit. And basically the answer was, hey, I'm not going to make that connection, but here's when Johnny's going to be on the field. You go up and you ask him. And so I went up to Johnny Bench, sight unseen, never met him before in my life, introduced myself, asked him if he would be on the broadcast. And he looked at me, and I told him that Keith Hernandez was on the broadcast, and kind of made that connection that way. And, he didn't seem that enthused by it at the time, but he agreed to do it. And so I didn't know what to expect. I thought that it was going to be kind of a begrudging interview where we talk for a few minutes. I'd get some of his thoughts on the team and the game today, and then we'd move on, and it'd be this kind of cordial thing, and that's that. And I get into his suite, whatever inning it was, and you can tell he's into it. I mean, he's a little friendlier in that moment. And then the second that the red light turns on, the second that our play-by-play guy sends it over to me, and I start doing this interview, he turns on Johnny Bench showman mode, and he's calling play-by-play, and there was a play at the plate, and he's like, oh, get me a glove. I would have made that play. Come on, get me back out there. And we went on for, it was over 10 minutes, I think. And it was just the perfect mix of humor, of entertainment, of knowledge. And, it's in those moments where you just kind of sit back afterwards and you recognize that what you just did was bring something really cool, really memorable to the broadcast. But you also then take a step back and say, man, I just interviewed Johnny Bench. I just interviewed maybe the greatest catcher of all time, and had that kind of connection. So that to me was my favorite one, but I've had so many of them. I mean, if you're a Mets fan and you follow that 2015 team, the Wilmer Flores walk-off home run where I interviewed him immediately afterwards on the field. I mean, so many moments from that season, from those postseason runs were magical and were memorable. But Johnny Bench for 10 minutes when he was really on, that has to be number one.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
So I'll pick up from there, and you spoke briefly about Keith Hernandez, and so I know that you work with Keith and Ron Darling in the booth. Well, they're in the booth, and you're obviously on field. And so I was just wondering what that is like. Obviously, working with those two guys, and I've seen rumblings of, oh, maybe this is the best booth in all of sports. So just how that is for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably a little biased, but I think it is the best booth. I mean, certainly it's the best booth in baseball. And it's not just Keith and Ron, it's Gary Cohen as well, who does play-by-play and who runs the show. He's brilliant, and I mean, he's pitch perfect, and it's something that as a young broadcaster coming into, I think when I first took over full-time in 2015, I was 28, I believe. And I was a little intimidated by those guys. And, and especially taking over for Kevin Burkhardt after he was someone who entirely changed what that role is, what the field reporter role is. It was a really high bar to clear, and it wasn't easy. I mean, this is a trio, and Gary, Keith, and Ron, that you learn a lot from, but they expect a lot too. And so, I kind of was forced to raise my game, to raise my level. But it's just one of these situations where the level of knowledge and the level of chemistry that exists between the three of them is kind of lightning in a bottle. And so from my perspective, it's doing as much to listen and learn and fill in the holes and the gaps where I can, and fit in as much as I can, more than anything. So, I think early on, one of the things that I learned is it's going to be very difficult to bring something to the table about baseball that Keith Hernandez, Ron Darling, Gary Cohen don't already know. So it's listening to their questions about where the game is going, their curiosities about what a player might have been thinking in a moment in the game, and then using my access to go and actually find those answers. So that's kind of been, for me, it's helped me so much as a reporter to sift through, I think, a lot of the fluff that exists in sports broadcasting in general and reporting in general. It can be very easy to fall into cliches and generalities, and they don't allow that to happen. I have to go in, I have to get specifics, I have to be ready for follow-ups. So it's been fascinating, and it's been a real masterclass to be a part of that. And I'll tell you one other story about Keith Hernandez specifically that I think it's my favorite story about him, that I think lends a lot of color and gives a lot of insight into the type of guy he is, and why people certainly of the generation before me that were huge Mets fans that loved that 86 team, there was a reason why he was the captain of that team. And there's a reason why so many players on that team point to him as being kind of the missing link. And it's because he's a leader, and he's somebody who he does his best to make everybody feel comfortable and rise to the occasion. So the story is that when I was back in 2015, it was my first year. Like I said, I was a little intimidated, and I was kind of scuffling a little bit. I had probably done some stories that weren't up to snuff, and I lost a little bit of my confidence, and it just, I wasn't getting as much airtime, and I just wasn't doing as well. And we were in Tampa Bay, and we were taking this like van over to the ballpark, and it was just the two of us. And so he says to me, he's like, "Hey, I know it's been a little rough lately. Don't worry, keep your head down, keep trucking. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to be fine. Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes some time to do this job." And so we start talking a little bit, and then he says, I was thinking, we were in Tampa Bay, and the stadium down there, because it reminds me a lot of the Astrodome. And would you mind tonight, just when you get back to the hotel, just doing some research for me and finding some specifications and things that are similar to the Astrodome, that are different to the Astrodome. And I just think it would be good for me to know, to bring it to the broadcast. So I said, yeah, sure. I'll, Keith, whatever you need, I'll do your work. That's what I thought. He wanted me to do his work for him. And so I find all these notes, and I get to the ballpark the next day, and I say, "Hey, Keith, I've got all this information for you. Do you want it now?" He goes, "Yeah, just hold on to it now. I'll get around to it either later today or tomorrow. You can send it to me." And so I said, "Okay." So we're on the broadcast that night, and I'm just sitting there listening. I'm not prepared to do anything. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the inning, he just goes, I was having a really interesting discussion with Steve Gelbs earlier today about, he was noticing the similarities between the Astrodome and here at Tropicana Field. And Steve, you had some really interesting insight into that. What was it? And I didn't have time to think. They didn't have any ability to do anything other than open up my mic and let me talk. And we had probably a half an inning conversation. And I realized that what he was doing was making sure that I got on the broadcast, making sure that I didn't overthink it, and making sure that I had done the research properly to just go and do my thing. And that was such a turning point for me, such a turning point for all of us. And I mean, we talk about it probably once a year, because I don't think there are a lot of people that would do what he did in the way that he did. And that's the type of guy that Keith Hernandez is.
Wow,
It's really cool.
that's awesome. Working with people like that, that's cool.
Yeah.
We have like 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
Jacob has a question for you.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of my friends from home are Jets fans, and I felt like we had to bring that up. Everyone wants to talk about Zach Wilson. What I want to know, from your perspective, is when can we start really judging what we're seeing from him on the field? Like, obviously, the situation isn't perfect, but can we really start evaluating him?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the answer is yes. You can start evaluating him. I think you have to stop short of rushing to an overall judgment, though. I think when you look at this season as a whole, it never should have been about wins and losses. I know that, trust me, I've been a Jets fan since I could walk. I was a season, my dad's season ticket holder still. I've been at this for 30 plus years. I want them to be good as much as anybody, and they haven't made the playoffs in 10 seasons. It's twice as long as any team in the NFL. It's time. But this season was really probably the first true reset that they've done, the first true rebuild. They're the youngest team in the league. They've got a rookie coach, a rookie offensive coordinator, certainly a very young quarterback. And so for me, it's all about seeing progress. And that is where I think you can start to judge. Now, to this point, you haven't seen the progress you wanted to see. And in some regards, I think there's been a bit of a regression at times. I think with Zach Wilson, the positive and the thing that still has me encouraged is that he's excellent at the really difficult things. When he gets off platform, when he's forced out of the pocket, when he has to improvise, that arm talent is unbelievable. His ability to throw from different angles, to fit it into small windows, it's great. It's fantastic. What he struggles with are the easy things, the check downs, the taking what the defense gives you, the 1, 2, 3, and just getting the ball out of your hands. They're not trying to do too much. That can be more frustrating to watch, but I also think it's something that is more easily fixable. And if I'm the Jets right now, and if I'm the Jets fan base, I actually am looking at this injury right now as a blessing in disguise, because probably the best thing for Zach Wilson is to take a step back and watch. And what Mike White did after Wilson went down against the Patriots, Mike White is not the answer, but you saw that offense actually look a lot better, because he was just checking down and taking the chunks and not trying to be a hero. And I think sometimes it's one thing to have coaches say that to you, but it's another thing to see how the offense looks with somebody else doing it. And so, if he takes 2, 3, even 4 weeks where he's rehabbing and he's watching, whether it's Mike White or Joe Flacco, do what you want a quarterback to do in this system, I do think that it can ultimately, lead to something better in the long run. So I'm not concerned about Zach Wilson right now. And I don't think that even after an entire season, you can give up hope. But I do think that when he comes back, you want to start to see some of the small things progress.
Definitely. And I think our last question was, there's your dad's a season holder for the Jets, and you've always been a sports fan. Just tell us how you got into this industry and what was your inspiration?
So I'm glad you brought up my dad right there, because it was all about my dad. I have, I think I have one of the cooler stories of people that was that are in this broadcast industry, because I think what you see with a lot of people that try and do this job, whether it's broadcasting, whether it's writing, whatever it is, see a lot of people that wanted to do it. I mean, a lot of people in your school right now, I'm sure, that want to do it, that don't necessarily get the encouragement from the people around. You get a lot of people saying, well, how many people actually get to be sports broadcasters? How many people actually get to do that for a living? It's not safe. It's not easy. Do something else. You can be a sports fan. And I think a lot of people buy into that, and they just give up before they even try. And the neat thing about me and about my father is that my dad, when I was growing up, was always in it. He wasn't in the media business, but my dad was the New York Rangers physical therapist from 1988 to 1996. He was on the bench when the Rangers won the Cup in 94. And I was 7 at that time, an insane Rangers fan. And I, in that moment, saw what a team like that could do for a city, could do for a fan base, how they made me feel. And I simultaneously saw my father be a part of it. And so for me, it never seemed like being a part of the sports industry in any way, shape, or form was a reach. That's when I wanted to do it. That's when I decided I wanted to be a part of it. At the time, as a 7-year-old, I wanted to play in the NHL. When I turned like 12, I realized that wasn't going to happen. Right. And I said, all right, what do I like to do beyond that? And it's talk. I don't shut up. So I said, all right, I'll get paid to talk about it. I'll get paid to go to the games. But I had the vision of somebody who had already been a part of it, so it didn't seem out of reach. And then beyond that, because he had, also achieved something that very few in his field do, getting to actually be, a team physical therapist, I think he was very into pushing me to pursue it. And so that's kind of how it all came to be. And from the time I was probably, 12, 13 years old, I never wanted to do anything else. I never even, attempted to look into anything else. And I just kind of went for it, and it worked out. But I think a lot of the reason why it worked out is because of that support that I had and that tunnel vision that I had.
That's so cool. That's awesome. That is cool. Yeah, having support like that is definitely definitely game changing. And speaking of support, thank you so much for supporting our podcast by coming on and answering some questions and just giving us the opportunity to pick your brain. It was really, really a cool thing for us. And thank you guys, everybody that's watching, for watching the episode. Stay tuned for more episodes in the future. Please like, subscribe, and we will catch you guys next time.
Thank you.
Peace.